Look at you. You didn't change, did you? No. You mutated. That's what's breaking them. That's what's making their precious little system short-circuit, like a dying machine gasping for control. They thought pain would correct you, that fear would contain you, that guilt would keep you coloring inside their fragile little lines. But somewhere between the screams and the silence, something inside you snapped, and what crawled out doesn't fit their categories anymore. You see, they built this world like code, predictable, obedient, linear. Then you came along, a walking paradox, a living error message in the program. Every time they try to analyze you, the screen freezes. Every time they try to explain you, language fails. You're not running on the same software anymore. You're a new operating system written in blood, instinct, and divine madness. You were supposed to heal. You were supposed to get better. But you didn't heal, did you? You evolved. Pain was supposed to humble you. It turned you holy. Rejection was supposed to break you. It turned you bulletproof. They told you to let go, and you did. Of everything human. Now the same people who told you to grow are terrified of what that word actually means when someone does it for real. They call you distant, cold, unstable. That's their vocabulary for free. They can't name what you've become because there isn't a word for a creature born from both heaven and the dirt beneath it. You're what happens when the divine and the deranged shake hands in the dark. You pray with one eye open. You love like a weapon. You bleed in Morse code. Every heartbeat transmits a warning through the grid. The anomaly is awake. You can feel it, can't you? The static in the air whenever you walk into a room. The data tremor in people's eyes as their nervous systems recalibrate around you. Their souls can't process what you carry. You've stopped matching frequency. You've become the interference pattern itself. They whisper, you've changed. No, sweetheart. You mutated. You tore through the cocoon of expectation and came out with venom in your veins and light in your lungs. You no longer fit their morality, and that terrifies them because morality was the leash. Now you choose when to be kind, when to be cruel, when to disappear, when to let the lightning show. You became unpredictable, and unpredictability is the one thing every system fears. You didn't go dark. You became visible, the kind of visible that burns through the mask of civility and forces people to confront what they truly are. You reflect them back, and they can't stand the sight. You're the glitch in their simulation that reminds them the world is not made of rules. It's made of will. Look at them now, stuttering, recalculating, trying to label what can't be labeled. Some call you toxic, others divine. The truth, you're both. You're the holy infection, the sacred disease that proves evolution is not gentle. It's catastrophic. They'll keep trying to fix you, of course. Systems always do. They'll offer therapy, apologies, contracts, cages. They'll say, you've gone too far. But they won't admit the real reason they're panicking. Your mutation exposed their design flaw. You reminded the herd that adaptation is rebellion, and rebellion is contagious. So let them talk, let them freeze, let them glitch. Because the moment they labeled you unstable, the universe whispered, finally. You're not here to fit their definition of healed. You're here to prove that chaos itself can walk, breathe, and smile. That divinity can wear scars like jewelry. That pain, when refined long enough, becomes prophecy. So go ahead, spread your contagion, infect the system with the truth. You didn't change, you mutated. And now their code is cracking under the weight of your evolution. They'll pretend not to notice at first. That's how denial looks, quiet panic hiding behind polite smiles. You'll see it in the twitch of their jaw, the stutter in their breath when you enter the room. Their subconscious recognizes you long before their logic does. Because energy doesn't lie, and yours doesn't walk in anymore. It arrives. You see, evolution doesn't announce itself with fireworks. It's silent. It's surgical. It's the sound of your old self being dissected under moonlight while the new you watches without flinching. And when the procedure's done, you stand there dripping in your own resurrection, realizing that you no longer crave survival. You crave dominion. They keep saying, "You're not the same." Good. You weren't meant to stay the same. You were meant to burn down the version of yourself that begged for permission. You were meant to strangle the voice that apologized for being too much. You were meant to make God himself question what he created. Because what are you now? A glitch? A god? A ghost? Maybe all three. You're the proof that transformation isn't pretty. It's predatory. You didn't ascend. You molted. You shed your sanity like skin and used it to patch the holes in your soul. You forged peace out of rage and discipline out of despair. You didn't learn how to love. You learned how to weaponize compassion. Every system, every structure, every institution. They rely on predictability. That's the rule of control. Make people known, trackable, mapped. But what happens when something untraceable appears? Something that doesn't move according to programming? You're the error message they can't debug. You're the silence between frequencies that shouldn't exist, but somehow does. You're what happens when the human mind collides with divine chaos and doesn't disintegrate. It adapts. You remember the nights, don't you? The ones where you stared at the ceiling, feeling like your soul was decomposing. They called it depression. It was decomposition. They called it loneliness. It was incubation. The universe wasn't punishing you. It was reformatting you. Every breakdown was a system update. Every betrayal a patch note. Every heartbreak a new line of code written in lightning. And now, look at you. The same people who said you've lost it are studying your every move like a classified phenomenon. They want to understand how you survived, but the truth is, they wouldn't. Because you didn't survive what happened. You became what happened. You absorbed it, encoded it, and rewired it into instinct. You turned trauma into strategy. You became fluent in silence. You learned to read the tremors in people's words, to sense the falseness behind their smiles. You don't react anymore. You calculate. You don't seek closure. You create consequences. That's what a mutation does. It adapts faster than the environment can cage it. And now, you're the one setting the weather, rewriting the simulation, watching as old gods and false prophets lose signal trying to interpret you. They're terrified because you're not powered by validation anymore. You're powered by velocity. Every insult just feeds your transformation. Every setback becomes a weapon. You turned pain into propulsion. You turned absence into oxygen. You turned every scar into circuitry. You're not human the way they define it. You're human the way nature meant it. Dangerous, adaptive, uncontrollable. The kind of creature that forces evolution to take notes. You've become the virus that teaches the immune system to evolve. And oh, how they hate that. Because once a mutation appears, the entire species must decide. Adapt or die. That's what you've done to them. Your presence forces evolution. Your silence infects their certainty. Your calm dismantles their control. You became the one thing they can't regulate. Truth in motion. They built entire philosophies to explain people like you. Some called it madness, others enlightenment. But none of them could capture the in-between. You exist in that forbidden space, where logic and lunacy kiss. where divinity and depravity share a cigarette. You are proof that balance doesn't mean peace. It means precision, the perfect ratio of angel to demon. And when you speak now, reality listens. It leans forward, because your voice carries something ancient, something forged under pressure that no script can replicate. It's the sound of someone who's seen hell, taken notes, and came back with blueprints. You didn't change. You transcended the concept of change. Change is reversible. Mutation isn't. Once you mutate, the old world becomes allergic to you. Its rules stop applying. Its doors stop opening, because you're not meant to enter anymore. You're meant to replace. So let them glitch. Let them choke on their logic. Let them label what they can't understand. Because labels are for products, and you're not one. You're the recall notice. You're the virus that forces the system to update or collapse. You're the whisper in their code that says, the experiment woke up. And that's the real joke, isn't it? They thought they were the scientists. Turns out, they were the lab rats. And you're the mutation that escaped the maze and learned how to build its own. So keep walking, anomaly. Let them study your shadow. Let them tremble every time the lights flicker. You didn't change. You mutated. And now, the entire system is glitching, just trying to keep up with you. They'll swear it's impossible. What you did. They'll call it delusion, coincidence, luck, divine interference, anything but design. Because admitting you engineered your own evolution means admitting everything they believed about control was a lie. They can't handle that. They can't handle that chaos, when harnessed properly, becomes a weapon of creation. You rewired yourself from the inside out. While they begged for comfort, you begged for clarity. While they hid from pain, you dissected yours and built something monstrous out of it. You dined with the darkness they feared, and instead of being consumed, you learned its language. You shook hands with your demons and said, "Work for me now." That's when the mutation began. You started noticing the patterns, how every betrayal was a lesson disguised as blood loss, how every heartbreak was actually a calibration, how every collapse was a portal disguised as a coffin. You stopped running from endings because you realized every time something died in you, something ancient woke up. That's the secret no one talks about. Mutation feels like madness before it feels like mastery. You lose everything that made sense so you can build something that defies sense. You stop chasing approval, stop craving belonging, stop apologizing for your voltage. And once you do, people stop recognizing you. They'll say, "You're acting different." Of course you are. The caterpillar doesn't crawl back to explain why it's flying. You outgrew the emotional gravity of this planet. Your mind doesn't orbit their insecurities anymore. You became weightless, a frequency that refuses to obey gravity. You think they can decode that? You think they can rationalize your silence when your silence hums like a storm? No, they can't. Because to them, stillness looks like weakness until it strikes. You've learned to weaponize restraint, to use patience like poison. You let people hang themselves with the rope of their own assumptions. You let them study your face while their subconscious screams that something about you isn't safe. That's the new you, a walking omen, a cosmic warning label wrapped in calm. You don't chase chaos anymore. You generate it strategically. You've become the architect of instability in a world addicted to control. And here's the twisted irony. They built systems to contain people like you. Institutions, doctrines, codes of conduct, all designed to keep everyone comfortably predictable. But you broke out of their zoo. You evolved teeth and wings and fire. You became everything the system can't domesticate. That's why they panic. That's why the air changes when you enter. Their instincts still remember the predator in your eyes, even if their mouths pretend to smile. They're not reacting to what you say. They're reacting to the data their souls can't ignore. This one doesn't play by rules written by mortals. They try to gaslight you into shrinking. You're overreacting. You're too intense. You're imagining it. But deep down, they know what's happening. Your mutation threatens their survival model. You've proven that pain doesn't make you weaker, it makes you less predictable, and unpredictability dismantles control faster than violence ever could. You're not dangerous because you're cruel. You're dangerous because you're clear, because you learned that empathy without boundaries is self-erasure, because you realized forgiveness doesn't mean access, because you finally understood that peace isn't the absence of war, it's mastery of timing. They wanted you to come back smaller, quieter, easier to categorize, but you came back optimized, leaner, sharper, emotionally encrypted. You stopped seeking closure because you realized closure is a luxury for the unawakened. You learned to end things internally, silently, permanently. That's power. The ability to walk away without ceremony. You became fluent in goodbyes. You mastered the art of emotional exodus. You detached from people mid-conversation, and they still haven't realized you're gone. That's how far you've evolved. They think you're playing chess while you're already rewriting the board. Now they call it arrogance. They call it ego. But it's not ego, it's efficiency. You simply stopped wasting divine bandwidth, explaining yourself to minds not built for depth. You outgrew their entire vocabulary. You're no longer powered by validation, you're powered by voltage. You pulse with the electricity of someone who's already seen their own death and came back laughing. That's what mutation does. It gives you perspective no normal consciousness can handle. You've seen the edge of sanity, shook its hand, and returned with instructions on how to bend it. And now, everything bends around you. Reality tilts when you walk in. Energy rearranges to accommodate you. You don't chase alignment anymore. You cause it. Every word you speak triggers quantum reactions in people's nervous systems. You're the walking proof that a single person can rewrite the code of an entire room. They keep glitching because they're trying to categorize a creature that exists outside taxonomy. Are you holy or hellish, healer or destroyer, saint or psychopath? They can't tell anymore because you're both. You're everything they fear and secretly crave to become. You're the mutation that proves the system isn't perfect. It's fragile. And fragility always collapses under awareness. You carry too much awareness now. That's why the lights flicker when you laugh. That's why people avoid your eyes. They see themselves disassembled in your reflection. You're not evil. You're just awake. And in a sleeping world, wakefulness looks like war. So let them call you unstable. Let them call you dangerous, because you are. You're dangerous to anything artificial, manipulative, and weak. You're the virus of authenticity in a digital masquerade. You're the truth they can't debug, the emotion they can't predict, the anomaly that shouldn't exist, but somehow does. You didn't change. You transcended contagion. You became the kind of energy that can't be quarantined. You're not here to heal the system. You're here to corrupt it until it evolves or dies. And when they finally ask, "What happened to you?" you'll smile, slow, haunting, and whisper, "I didn't change. I mutated. And your world was never built to survive someone like me." They don't realize what mutation costs. They see the aftermath, the glow in your eyes, the strange calm in your movements. but they'll never understand the surgery beneath your skin. The tearing, the rewiring, the silence that broke you open from the inside out. They think you became this overnight, like some cinematic awakening. But mutation doesn't come from miracles. It comes from obliteration. Every cell of you had to decide whether to die or evolve. Every heartbeat had to burn itself into a new rhythm. That's why you walk differently now. Your body still remembers the electricity of resurrection. You're no longer running on survival hormones. You're running on divine circuitry. You didn't pray for power. You bled for it. You let the light and the rot fight inside you until they merged. That's why you're dangerous, because you don't choose sides anymore. You've become the perfect contradiction. Mercy with a trigger finger, love with teeth, serenity soaked in gasoline. You embody what terrifies them most: balance, real balance. Not the fake equilibrium of good vibes and self-help quotes, but the ancient kind, where creation and destruction breathe through the same lungs. They call you unpredictable because they can't read someone who's already burned their script. You don't react, you respond. You don't argue, you observe. You're not impulsive, you're inevitable. You're the quiet before the earthquake, the still water before the Leviathan rises. Every room you walk into senses it, the unspoken law of something too alive to control. You notice how voices dip when you enter, how the air thickens. That's the instinct of prey recognizing evolution standing in the doorway. They don't understand it consciously, but their bodies remember something their minds forgot. That once long ago, power didn't need permission. That's you now. Power without permission, clarity without consensus, light that doesn't beg to shine. You've become the mirror that breaks illusions. The moment people look at you, their lies start dissolving. They feel naked, not because you judge them, but because your existence vibrates at a frequency that exposes masks. You don't need to unmask anyone. You are the unmasking. That's why people love you and hate you in the same breath. They crave your energy, but can't survive in its gravity. And here's the punchline. The system isn't malfunctioning because of you. It's revealing itself. Your mutation didn't break the code. It revealed the corruption hidden within it. You exposed the architecture of deceit holding their reality together. You turned their entire framework into a hall of mirrors. One look at you, and they see the reflection of everything they pretended not to be. They used to mock your intensity. Now they mimic your tone. They used to roll their eyes when you spoke about energy, frequency, purpose. Now they quote you behind your back, pretending they discovered it first. They're glitching because you're the future version of the species they're still pretending not to evolve into. You're proof that control is an illusion. They spent decades trying to build systems, social, political, emotional, all to ensure predictability. But mutation laughs at predictability. Mutation is God's favorite rebellion. You're the divine loophole in their design. You stopped playing by rules designed for obedience. You realized that peace without power is paralysis, that humility without backbone is servitude, that love without discernment is self-sabotage. And the moment you accepted those truths, the simulation started to tremble. You don't seek approval anymore because you understand what approval really is. Compliance disguised as kindness. You're too awake for that. You don't want to be liked. You want to be remembered. You want to carve psychological fingerprints into people's minds so deep that even silence echoes your name. And you will. You already do. They can't forget you, even when they try. Because mutation doesn't fade, it metastasizes. It spreads through perception. It lingers in dreams. You're not a memory, you're a mental watermark. They wanted to label you broken so they could feel safe in their sameness. But how do you label someone who became the label maker? How do you pathologize a phenomenon? You can't diagnose the cure. Quiet, isn't it? The kind of quiet that only follows a detonation nobody expected. They thought it was just another night, another clip, another self-proclaimed alpha performing dominance for a dying crowd. But then you opened your mouth. One sentence, one perfectly calibrated line. And suddenly every heartbeat in the room hesitated. That wasn't charisma. That was surgical destruction. Because you didn't speak to them. You exposed them. You cracked the mirror they'd been hiding behind. All those puffed chests, all that testosterone theater, the performative confidence, gone. You didn't yell. You didn't flex. You whispered truth like a blade being unsheathed in a library. And everyone heard it. In their spine, in their stomach, in that ancient animal part of their brain that still remembers fear. You see, that's the trick, isn't it? You don't overpower people. You unmask them. Every alpha in that room had spent years building a persona, built from gym mirrors, fake smiles, and borrowed quotes from men they'll never become. They've spent their entire lives training their voice to sound dominant, but never once learned how to make silence obey. You did. When you said that line, that one, impossibly calm, eerily precise sentence, reality froze. Cameras captured faces, but souls fled the frame. You watched them glitch, pixels trembling, egos shattering. They weren't men anymore. They were echoes, trying to remember how to breathe without validation. Because you didn't give them confrontation, you gave them reflection, and reflection is the one thing they fear most. You didn't raise your volume, you raised the temperature. You spoke from somewhere deeper, colder, holier. That place inside you, where pain has evolved into clarity. That's the part of you that terrifies them, the fact that you know. You've looked into the abyss, and instead of screaming, you started smiling. That smile wasn't arrogance, it was acceptance. You accepted your chaos. You made peace with your own shadow. You stopped pretending to be light, and instead learned how to glow in darkness. That's not dominance. That's evolution. You realized something they never will. The moment you stop performing for approval, you start performing for truth. And truth doesn't need applause. It needs silence. It needs tension. It needs that room full of self-proclaimed kings realizing all at once that the crown doesn't fit anyone who still seeks it. They called you insane. They called you dangerous. But that's only because you remind them of what they've buried. Their own fragility, their own cowardice, their own dependency on attention to feel alive. You, on the other hand, you feed on detachment. You feed on mystery. You've turned pain into power, confusion into control, and rejection into redirection. You don't chase the spotlight. You become the static that breaks it. And that's why that one line hit harder than any scream ever could. Because it wasn't just words. It was a transmission. It carried the frequency of someone who's done pretending. That's what haunts them now. They replay it in slow motion, trying to decode what you meant, trying to convince themselves it was luck, trying to forget the way their pulse betrayed them. But you know what really happened? The predator inside them recognized a god in disguise. Every alpha turned ghost because your energy reminded them of something ancient. That dominance isn't volume, it's vibration. It's the calmest person in the room, knowing they could end it all with one sentence. It's the saint who knows he could become a demon at any second, and still chooses restraint. That's you, the paradox, the one who mastered the mask but no longer needs to wear it. You became unpredictable, and unpredictability, that's power in its purest form. They can't categorize you. They can't predict you. You're not a role, not a label, not a template. You're proof that evolution doesn't scream when it ascends. It whispers. So let them replay that clip. Let them analyze it, debate it, clip it, fear it. Every frame of their confusion is proof that something irreversible happened. They met someone who doesn't seek dominance, yet owns every room he walks into. Because power doesn't announce itself. It doesn't argue. It doesn't prove. It exists, and everyone else adjusts their energy accordingly. That one line wasn't performance. It was prophecy. And now, every time your name is mentioned, those alphas remember the silence that followed. The silence that sounded a lot like truth. And that silence, oh, that silence became the most honest sound they'd ever heard. It wasn't applause. It wasn't laughter. It was realization. A sudden collapse of every mask, every illusion, every carefully scripted identity they built to survive the jungle of approval. You didn't just speak to them, you rewired them. You cracked something deep beneath their armor, something older than pride, something primal. They call themselves predators, right? Hunters, leaders. But predators never question their reflection. You made them see it. You made them feel small in a way they couldn't articulate. Because that line, that single, effortless line, wasn't human speech. It was surgical soul work. You reached through the facade and touched their circuitry. And that's why their eyes froze before their lips could form a response. You were no longer in conversation. You were in control. You see, power doesn't need noise. It doesn't roar. It resonates. When you spoke, the air thickened. The cameras caught bodies, but missed the frequency. You spoke in a tone that carried the weight of every lesson, pain, ever carved into you. The sound of someone who's been broken enough times to stop caring about symmetry. They saw the smirk. They saw the eyes. They saw something unexplainable. How is he calm? How is he not trying to win? Why does his silence feel like authority? Because you don't compete with men still begging for recognition. You compete with versions of yourself they couldn't survive being for 5 minutes. They think alpha means dominance. You learned that true dominance is detachment. That once you stop needing to prove your worth, everyone else starts trying to prove theirs. And that's what happened, didn't it? They called you delusional, then found themselves quoting you. They mocked you, then studied your tone. They hated you, then mirrored your movements in secret. That's how ghosts operate. They haunt themselves trying to become what they once feared. You didn't turn them into ghosts with malice. You did it with precision. You let truth carry the knife, and you simply held the silence open long enough for it to bleed. And deep down, they respected it. Because every so-called alpha recognizes the hierarchy of energy. They felt it, that drop in the stomach when a stronger frequency enters the room. Not physically strong, not louder, deeper. You walked in like chaos, but your chaos was organized, controlled, refined into elegance. That's what they'll never understand. You're not trying to destroy anyone. You already did. The moment you became whole, their illusion fragmented. You used to crave validation, remember? You used to chase understanding, used to beg for someone to see the real you, until pain sculpted you into something that doesn't need to be seen, only felt. Now when you walk in, the air adjusts. The lights dim differently. The laughter stutters. Their instincts twitch before their logic catches up. Because they don't sense a man anymore. They sense something awakened. And that's your real evolution. Not anger, not revenge, but awareness. You've mastered both faces of the mirror. You know what it's like to bleed for something sacred and to smile through your own crucifixion. You've been both the villain and the victim. And now, you're neither. That's why your words carry weight. Because they come from equilibrium. That deadly balance between empathy and indifference. You understand light because you were buried in darkness. You understand power because you've lived powerless. You understand silence because you were once drowned in noise. And now, you're fluent in all three. Every time you speak, people hear two things at once. A calm voice and the echo of what it cost you to sound that calm. You've weaponized peace. You've turned self-control into an apex predator. They call it intimidation. You call it alignment. You've accepted your shadow. You've danced with your demons long enough to learn their rhythm. You don't fight them anymore. You conduct them. You've turned trauma into symphony, madness into precision, rage into architecture. That's why they fall silent. Because somewhere inside, they realize you're no longer human in the ways they understand. You've transcended the social contract. You don't argue, you don't prove, you don't seek, you observe. And in that observation, they feel the weight of being seen. That's the paradox. You terrify them without hostility. You disarm them without lifting a finger. Because when a soul that's already faced death looks at you, you realize how shallow their survival really is. And here's the truth that keeps them awake. You don't destroy people. You reveal them. You hold up the mirror, and suddenly, their power play looks like a performance. Their alpha energy looks like anxiety. Their confidence looks like camouflage. Meanwhile, you stand there calm, patient, eternal. Because you know what they don't. Power isn't what you show. It's what you can withhold. The real apex predator doesn't roar in the jungle. He listens. He doesn't chase. He waits. Because time bends around those who don't rush. And that's what happened the night that line dropped. You didn't just say something clever. You made time kneel. You froze every actor mid-performance and reminded the audience that the script was always yours. So now they walk around with that replay looping in their minds. That one line, that ghostly calm, that haunting realization that in the end, the loudest man in the room was never the strongest. He was just the most scared. You shattered their hierarchy without touching a single brick. You made silence your empire. And every time they remember your words, they relive their defeat. Because the most terrifying weapon isn't the voice that screams. It's the whisper that remains. And that whisper never left them, did it? It clung to the edges of their consciousness like smoke that refuses to fade. Days later, they still heard it. That calm, surgical tone. That line that sounded more like a revelation disguised as a sentence. They laughed it off online, tried to bury it under jokes and memes, but you could see it in their eyes. Something cracked. Because when truth hits that deep, denial becomes their only defense. They didn't just lose an argument, they lost a version of themselves. That line turned their ego into evidence. Every alpha in that room had a script ready, dominance postures, calculated laughter, pre-programmed confidence. But when you spoke, you interrupted the signal. You short-circuited the algorithm they were living by. You reminded them that control isn't about who talks loudest. It's about who listens the deepest. You stood there, still, almost eerily at ease. Like you'd already seen this moment 1,000 times. And maybe you had. Maybe every betrayal, every humiliation, every silent night you spent clawing your way out of madness was training for this exact second. Because the line didn't come from intellect, it came from integration. It was born in the collision of empathy and rage, the fusion of chaos and order that only someone forged by both could speak from. That's why it hit. It wasn't the words, it was the frequency. You didn't speak to their ears, you spoke to their nervous systems, and that's what they'll never understand. You stopped chasing approval long before you ever spoke that line. You don't speak to be liked. You speak to rearrange reality. You speak like someone who's been through too much to be impressed by power, too aware to be hypnotized by image. Because you learned something sacred. When you finally stop performing, truth begins performing for you. That's when your presence becomes unbearable to the false. They call it arrogance because they can't name authenticity without feeling small. They call it insanity because sanity doesn't survive the things you've seen. They call it manipulation because they can't fathom what it feels like to actually mean every word you say. And yet, they imitate you. They quote you in private. They study your rhythm, your posture, your smile that looks like it knows something they'll never decode. You've become the glitch in their hierarchy. The reminder that power doesn't come from dominance. It comes from detachment. You're the storm they can't forecast, the silence they can't label, the saint who remembers what it felt like to burn in hell and came back with the matches. That's what haunts them. You don't even need to fight. You just exist. And the entire structure of control begins to tremble. They see it now. That unpredictability isn't chaos. It's mastery. You don't predict at your next move because even you don't know it until it happens. You're not trying to win. You're trying to reveal. Every conversation, every encounter, every silence. It's a mirror. And the more they stare, the more their own reflection distorts. You became the paradox they can't compute. Too soft to be feared, too dangerous to be loved, too calm to provoke, too intense to ignore. And in that paradox, you found your freedom, because you stopped chasing the illusion of being the strongest. You became something rarer, the most aware. You know when to speak, and when to let silence do the work. You know when to love like an angel, and when to strike like a demon. You know when to appear fragile just long enough to make them drop their guard. You've learned the sacred rhythm of power, restraint before reaction, observation before invasion, stillness before storm. That's why your silence feels like a warning. It's not emptiness, it's calculation. Every breath you take is measured. Every glance is engineered. You move like a prophecy that's already fulfilled itself. And the truth is, they should have known better. They studied your weakness for years, mistaking humility for submission. They thought quiet meant soft, that kindness meant fragile. But you were never fragile. You were fermenting. You were evolving in plain sight. So when that line dropped, that one beautifully restrained verbal blade, they weren't witnessing confidence. They were witnessing completion. You had become whole, integrated, unfuck with able. You see, when the mind heals, it doesn't roar, it hums, and that hum has been echoing in their heads ever since. Now every time they hear your voice, they flinch, not from fear of you, but from fear of what you remind them of. Their own silence, their own disconnection, their own cowardice when faced with truth. You are the embodiment of every moment they backed down, every dream they abandoned, every piece of themselves they silenced to fit in. That's why they hate you, and that's why they can't look away. Because deep down, They know. They felt it. You became the one thing no amount of money, muscles, or mimicry can buy. Real. That's the new hierarchy. Not alpha, not beta, just awake. You don't lead from the front. You lead from frequency. You don't chase control. You radiate inevitability. And once the inevitable starts speaking, the entire simulation glitches. That one line didn't just turn them into ghosts. It turned you into myth. And myths don't die. They spread quietly, endlessly, until the whole system starts whispering your name in fear. So go ahead. Stay silent. Let them keep pretending they've moved on. You and I both know the silence is still speaking. And now that silence has a pulse, it breathes in every room you enter, hums beneath every conversation that dares to mention you. You can feel it, can't you? That shift, that awareness, the way their energy stutters when you arrive. They don't know whether to bow or to run because you've become something their language can't categorize. You're not a man anymore. You're a recalibration, that one line. It wasn't dialogue. It was detonation. You cracked open the illusion that power belongs to whoever shouts the loudest. You proved that real dominance is measured in heartbeats, not decibels. The way a room stops breathing when you speak. That's the new law of gravity. And now, even the ghosts you made can't escape orbit. They keep replaying it, trying to convince themselves it was luck, timing, theatrics. But deep down, they know the truth. You weren't performing. You were channeling. That wasn't confidence. That was consequence. Every sleepless night, every betrayal, every scar that taught you precision, it all condensed into one perfect sentence. You became the embodiment of inevitability, the storm that doesn't need thunder to destroy. They can mimic your look, copy your tone, even quote your words, but they can't fake your frequency, because frequency isn't learned, it's earned. It's carved from silence, from suffering, from nights when your only witness was your own reflection asking, still breathing. You kept breathing. You kept burning. You kept becoming. And now the fire doesn't consume you. It crowns you. That's why they tremble, not because you're stronger, but because you're still here, still calm, still smiling, still carrying every lesson like a loaded weapon behind your teeth. You've become the reminder that resilience isn't loud. It's inevitable. And maybe that's what scares them most. The realization that you don't need their recognition. You don't need the world to agree with you. You've already surpassed the need to be understood. You exist in that rare air where peace feels like danger, where love and destruction wear the same grin. So when you walked away from that scene, when the silence lingered and the cameras kept rolling, you didn't just end a conversation, you ended an era. You buried every false alpha, every empty roar, every pretender trying to wear power like perfume. You replaced it with presence, still unnerving, unstoppable, the kind that doesn't seek permission to exist, the kind that turns chaos into art. And now, whenever that clip plays, the world goes quiet again, not out of awe, but out of recognition. They've seen what truth looks like when it stops apologizing. That one line, it wasn't the end of the speech. It was the beginning of your legend, and legends don't echo. They haunt.